Hello tanks and tankettes, and welcome to the new Frontline Mode, and me playing Wheel of Tanks, and actually kind of enjoying playing Wheel of Tanks, which is a thing that hasn't really happened in a while. This is the new-ish mode that's been introduced to the game. It has been tested previously. I'm trying to even think when that was, probably last year at this point, when they were trying this out on a test server. But we're here now with it actually being on the live server, and I'm not going to go super in depth here into all of the mechanical details of how this mode works, but basically it's a bigger, more evolved version of the standard assault battles where you've got one team attacking and one team defending. And in this case, well, it's exactly the same, only the areas that you're attacking and defending are spread out over a much bigger map. In fact, there's 3 lanes, we'll call them, and the attacking team has to work their way up to the top of the map, and the defending team is basically playing for time and delaying them as much as possible. There's a whole bunch of other things going on. There's various call-in abilities, none of which I actually had enabled for this particular game. This was actually my very first game in Frontline, and there's also repair points, which you can see on the mini-map. And the mechanics of dying and respawning and repairing, well, you'll get to see all those as we go through the game as well. Now, you might notice this is looking a little bit on the fuzzy side. One of the wrinkles, if we can put it that way, is that frame rates are fairly terrible in this mode. I had to turn down the render quality. I've turned down a bunch of the graphics settings, but I also turned down the render quality, which is a thing I never normally have to touch. And even then, towards the end of this game, it's going to be dropping below 30 FPS with the recording. But I tried various ways of doing it, and short of dropping the render quality right down to the point where it was below what I'd really consider acceptable for recording for YouTube, it just seems to be inevitable. And when you're playing it as well, you'll notice moments when I'm struggling with my aiming, and it's because the frame rate is just going all over the place. So this is the big downside of this at the moment. If you have a weaker graphics card, you're really going to struggle with this. You might have to like turn down the render setting to like half before you can get an acceptable level of FPS. And even with a much more powerful rig, I mean, Circon was badly struggling to get decent FPS as well. So, yeah, there's that. That's the big thing at the moment. And we were also supposed to be getting the ability to have 5-man platoons, which, as of it launching, and as of me recording this, I don't think they've fixed that yet. Because I went onto Circon stream, me and Snooze, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and thinking, yeah, we'll platoon up with Circon and try out this new mode. And then we spent about 15 minutes trying to actually get it to work before discovering that no, it was simply just straight up broken. So 5-man platoons are possible, and that also makes this an interesting mode to play with. But I haven't actually gotten to try them out yet. So anyway, but that should change things a bit. So we're on the middle lane here in this game, and on the defending team, as you can see. I seem to have gotten on the defending team more often so far, but I think it is just luck of the draw. I've had some attacking games as well, and I think it's a little easier to win as the defending team, but I have had wins where I was on the attacking team. And the fact that it is these 3 separate lanes, these 3 different battle areas, does have quite a big knock-on, because I've noticed this in a couple of games where 1 or 2 of those lanes might be doing really well, and then you'll have the 3rd just completely bogged down and not able to push or make any headway whatsoever. And this kind of brings me on to talking about why I've been enjoying this. For one thing, these are much longer games. I think the longest it can last, is it half an hour or is it 35 minutes? I don't know, but the average they've stated is somewhere around 25-26 minutes, and that certainly holds true for most of the matches I've been in. This one is exactly 26 minutes long, and so for one thing, that's quite nice. I like this longer pace of game, and this is one of the things I like about World of Warships, is that longer pace of game. There is just more to do. The whole thing isn't just going to be wham bam and over in 3 minutes. And if Capturing Guy were present, I'm sure he would add some ribald commentary of his own to that statement. But anyway, so that's a big factor. It doesn't just feel like it can really easily go one way or the other. Although having said that, if you're on an attacking team that really isn't making any headway, you can end up just getting bogged down and not making any progress. But even then, you're still getting to shoot stuff, you're still getting to do damage. And so, as a player, it doesn't completely feel like a waste of your time as a 3-minute crushing win/loss, depending on which team you're on, can do. So that's a really big bonus in my book. Even in those games where you are struggling to make any headway, you still, as an individual player, get to do something. One of the other really nice things is, well, it's tier 8. It's tier 8 only. Completely flat matchmaking. This is as balanced as it's going to get. There are some problematic machines at tier 8, but due to the nature of this mode, due to the nature of the much bigger map, the only one that is kind of truly problematic, perhaps, is the S1, the Swedish tier 8 premium tank destroyer, because it is very, very sneaky, it has very high penetration, and it's also got enough armour to auto bounce. Is it 90mm guns? I think it's 90 mils. Yeah, 90mm guns, and the 100mm and above can get through with the overmatch mechanics in the game. So the fact that it can be so sneaky, the fact that it has such high pen and does such reliable damage, and the fact that there are so many areas dotted around where it's just perfect bush cover for a sneaky tank destroyer, it really is the perfect environment for the S1. But I've also found that the armoured behemoths do alright as well. I've had a number of very good rounds that have incorporated the Lerva. The KV-4 has actually come in useful on various occasions. And if I had the tier 8 German super heavy, the VK, or the Maubrecher, if I had either of those, I'd have tried those out as well. The big downside is, of course, they are slower, so I found they're more useful at the start of a round when you've got less distance to actually physically drive, but because a lot of them, the engagements are at the more kind of medium range, which is not what I'm doing here. I've tried to push in a bit, and bear in mind this was my very first round, so I was kind of just winging it slightly, but because you are at those more medium ranges, that's where your armour begins to be a bit more effective. Especially so, since due to the nature of economics of this game mode, there feels, maybe I've just been really lucky, but there feels like there's so much less premium spam around. Because the more that you fire off, the heavier the cost is going to be over this much longer round of well, this much longer game mode. So there's all these things, and that was me being blown up, by the way. The replays, it's like the one bug with the replays for this mode is it doesn't show you actually getting blown up, it just immediately flicks to the selection screen. So there you can see the whole map and the lane where we are, and the enemy team have taken A and C already, but we're holding firm on B for now, though I think we are just about to lose it. But that doesn't really matter, you're just trying to delay the enemy team long enough. Although you do want to try and delay them for as long as possible, because every time the attacking team gets one of those cap circles, they get some extra time added on. So, yeah, it's been a pretty good experience so far. It's just, there's so many, like, it doesn't fix RNG, and it doesn't stop people using premium rounds entirely. I have still met some people using premium, but the amount being fired is just so much less compared to standard games, it feels like. And maybe people have been adjusting their ammo loadouts appropriately. Because apart from anything else, you can, like, if you are staying alive long enough, you can go and get an ammo reload at one of the repair points, even if you don't need to repair any actual hit points. So if you know that you're not going to have to, you know, you've fired all your AP, oh, I'm going to have to fire my APCR now. No, you can actually just go and pick up some more AP and it's fine. And because firing APCR or any premium ammo just does get really quite expensive, it has a pretty big impact on how much you're earning in any given round. It's nice to drive those more armoured tanks. It's nice to drive the tank destroyers and have some cover. It's nice to be in a mobile medium tank or a mobile light tank and actually have lots of ground to play with, because most standard maps they don't have any room to move around. They are either a series of corridors or they've had all the soft cover stripped away over the years. So it works really well. And you might say, and Circon actually did say this during the stream yesterday, that it does kind of make it more a step in the direction of War Thunder. And yeah, you could say that, because War Thunder's battles are very much based around different objectives for the most part. And that's certainly true of this map mode. But as I say, you know, you can also just see it as an expansion of the existing assault mode. So I wasn't having terribly much luck with my Scorpion in this round, to be honest. I think it's still a pretty good choice, but it's fragile and it's tall and it doesn't have a particularly great camo value. So I think the Scorpion, if you're able to keep at range and use the mobility, it's still pretty decent for this mode. But the S1 is, I think, king of the premium tank destroyers. I've also had some good rounds in the Jagdpanther 2, though, I've got to say. And I've also seen people using things like the ISU and the Jagdpanther... No, I just said the Jagdpanther 2. What's the one I'm thinking of?
Ready for deployment.
Nope, my brain's gone blank. I've seen at least one Rheinmetall Borsig, but that one doesn't seem hugely popular. Maybe because it's a bit less mobile. I don't know. Oh, artillery. I haven't even mentioned artillery yet. There are artillery call-ins as part of the extra consumables or whatever you want to call them. But as for actual artillery pieces, there seem to be some fairly hefty restrictions on how many can be in the field at any given time. Now, I haven't tested it out directly because I don't have any tier 8 artillery. I have very, very few artillery in my garage. Only one of them, and of course does happen to be the Conqueror gun carriage, but anyway, less said about that the better, probably. But yeah, I've been, I think, killed by artillery once in 2 days of playing this. And that 2 days of, you know, I say that, it's like, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours total playtime over those 2 days. But yeah, I've been killed by direct fire player-controlled artillery once. I've been hit by the artillery consumable a bunch of times, but most of the time it hasn't actually been enough to kill me. It just wounded me and forced me to withdraw, or else weakened me to the point where somebody else got the kill. So unless you're already low health, the artillery call-in isn't necessarily going to do it on its own. But yeah, I think it's one artillery per flank. So the chances of you being targeted by an arty at any given moment are actually fairly slim, which is, it's quite nice, you know. It's again, it's one more thing that this has over standard games, is that artillery is spread so much more thinly. And even with the call-in, the consumable, there's still a very good chance, you know, there's a whole bunch of them. There's a good chance that somebody will be using one of the others instead of that they might have the recon or the what's the other one that's available? There's one that basically acts as like a buff, essentially, to everybody around you. It has the same effect as the food consumable, but only within a certain radius of your tank. So that's quite nice. And then what's the other? I'm sure there's another one on top of that as well. Circon was finding when he was using the recon one that it was lagging him out rather badly. And I don't know what the principal cause is. I think it's just because the map is so big. Even turning down the draw distance and the object LODs didn't seem to help that much with that. It really was only when I dropped the render setting that it helped. But anyway, yeah, that definitely needs some refinement. I might be a bit surrounded here, by the way. That symbol there, yeah, that's like once they've captured and you're still in the zone, there is like an auto artillery call-in. There's also an artillery call-in if you try and spawn camp. So if you're on the defending team and you try and spawn camp, there's like an auto artillery call-in on you if you're just sat in the spawn zone waiting for people to appear. So it's not looking that great. We're still defending D for the most part, and I'm trying to help out and swap over to that side. The cooldown on the vehicle reselection does seem to depend on like how quickly you die. I think it's that little row of tanks above the info panel down in the top left hand, bottom left hand corner. I can count. Yes. No, not even count. No, that's not numbers. That's like, oh my god. Anyway, well done, brain. I made it for like 15 minutes before completely losing the plot. That's probably quite good going for me. So we've been pushed back. Let's just go with what's happening on screen, shall we? We've been pushed back. They're starting to now seriously press on the final objectives. And this is how the attacking team wins, basically. They've got to take those intermediate objectives to gain time, and then they've got to destroy the final objectives. And they're like, I think some of them are big turrets. I think maybe they're all big turrets. I'm not actually 100% sure. I've not driven around and looked. I've been usually a bit busy at that point. So yeah, you've got to not lose all of those, essentially. You've got to try and keep at least a couple of those alive until the timer runs out as the defending team, which is what we're trying to do here, is just delay them as much as possible. So this is me getting to side scrape in a lurva, and I don't, you know, when I play this in random games, there's usually not that much opportunity because most of the maps just aren't quite suitable for it. But there's such a variety in this map. You know, you've got all the rolling hills and the bushes and stuff for 2/3 of it, and then you've got this urban area towards the end, and that suddenly, again, you know, the heavy tanks, the super heavies come into their own. Although I'm getting a bit beaten up here because they are starting to seriously outnumber us. So this isn't looking so good. There was just too many tanks here, and I can only fire so fast. And my only real backup is that Indian Panzer, who doesn't have a lot of armor and is dealing with some difficulties of their own right now. Still though, I'm approaching 8k damage, which is not too shabby. Sadly, I didn't quite get the reload to pop that defender in the commander's hatch, which would have been a nice shot, but never mind. And because I think because I've just been doing enough in this game, I'm not having to wait a long time with a cooldown. There's like a free cam thing as well. If you are having to sit and wait like a minute before you can call in your next tank, you do have the option of basically doing what you can do in World of Warships and zoom around all over the battlefield. And it doesn't show you everything, it only shows you what's rendered for your own team. But it's a thing you can do. It's a way you can pass the time. And it's better than just sitting staring at the selection screen for a minute or more. So you'll know I've been choosing a fairly hefty selection of premium tanks, and in terms of the economics, because I can probably talk a bit about that at this stage, it's not, I'm not going to say this is a super generous mode, but it's not stingy either. It heavily depends on how much damage you do as a player, and also how many times you get blown up as well, because you're still paying like full ammo costs and you're still paying your repair costs for all your tanks that you're getting blown up. So taking out premium tanks is definitely not a bad idea. And this round we're watching right now, this is going to be my best round in terms of I think damage, XP and credits made, although I'm less sure about the credits made, but it probably would have been even better still if I'd taken out just exclusively premium tanks, because you're still getting the benefit of a premium tank, and if you've got the a credit booster available, then obviously that's going to be very useful as well. And of course, having a premium account also definitely helps. So you're not going to lose money. The worst result I've had on a loss was, I think, 40 to 50,000 credits, which for the time spent playing actually is not that good. I think the worst result I've had on a win was about 78k. But Circon managed some like 500,000 credit games, so you know, if you're doing really well and absolutely kicking ass, you know, his record was what, 17, 18k damage, something like that. It was quite ridiculous. I think that was one of the rounds when he predominantly played the S1 as well. then yeah, you can make a serious profit. It starts to become like a game of World of Warships in terms of the amount of credits that it's giving you. But for most people, it's going to be maybe 100 to 200k. And if you were playing a premium tank at tier 8 and having a decent round, being top tier, then you know, you could possibly beat that profit level, but probably over a longer period of time. Because bear in mind, you know, you're in a tier 8 premium, you're going to get tier 10 games and you're going to get ruffle stomped from time to time. More than, you know, from time to time. So I think over a longer period, this is actually a reasonably profitable mode. In terms of XP, it's probably a bit more middling. I think you'd be better off. I don't know what happened with that shot there. It was either the... I think this was the FPS throwing me off a bit at this point. You can see the FPS counter there is not looking great. Towards the end of this, just playing it, it was very much below 20 FPS on a more or less constant basis. And if it's jerking up and down between 20, 25 and 30, you know, that doesn't help when you're trying to make snapshots. Anyway, where was I? XP. In terms of XP, just playing random battles over the same amount of time is probably going to get you more XP. So it's possibly not the best mode for grinding out tanks. And it's a decent mode for grinding credits, but all offset against that, of course, is the fact that you are guaranteed top tier, tier 8 matchmaking. Which is a pretty powerful incentive in my eyes. I would honestly take this over the utter uncertainty of the random matchmaker queue, even if it's not as efficient in terms of grinding a tier 8. And there probably are a couple of tier 8s that I could grind with this mode a bit. And I'm not sure exactly how it does distribute the experience per tank and per crew. Obviously, the bigger variety of tanks you play, the more it's going to get split up. Whereas if you're waiting for that cooldown period to end and you go back to a tank that you've already played in the round, then I imagine that is more... it consolidates the XP in, you know, fewer places, if that makes any sense. So if you were going to grind it, you would want to stick to playing 1 or 2 tanks and trying to just stay alive at least as far as, you know, the cooldown being over for you to select the previous tank again. This is I don't know about the super Pershing for this mode, by the way. I think I just picked it just to see how it would do, given that I knew we were near the end of this one way or the other, because we've lost 2 of the final objectives. There's 3 left at this point. And the enemy team is seriously starting to press on us. But they're maybe not moving across. And this is one thing that I've not seen players doing that much of. And hello, flying buttress out of nowhere. It's funny how they just... do I get bonus points for knowing that's a flying buttress? I don't know. Anyway, it's funny how things just appear out of nowhere in front of you sometimes. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, and one thing I have noticed is that people tend to stick in the lanes that they've spawned in. You can, of course, drive laterally across the map. It's going to take you a little while to do it. But like when you get to this kind of stage, when the final remaining objectives are kind of clustered in particular areas, I don't know, it felt like... And I kind of had this on attacking teams as well, and possibly I was also guilty of it. It felt like people were sort of ignoring the ability to play it like a bishop, you know, move diagonally or move across, and instead just sticking on what was in front of them. And to be fair, sometimes if there's a bunch of enemy tanks in front of you, you can't exactly disengage. Although I think you can force respawn, as it were. You can bail out of the tank that you're in. I think it's the J key. I'm not sure, I've not actually had cause to do that myself yet, but you know, if you're in a low health tank or you're in a really slow tank, and bearing in mind you're probably going to get the full repair costs, then you could just jump across, and it might even be quicker to do that and respawn at that point. But yeah, this is a slow tank though. I'm not sure this was the best choice, but when we're at this kind of stage and we're all just trying to defend the last few objectives, being in a slow tank maybe doesn't matter that much. That's one of the wrecked objectives you can see there. Just a giant, big-ass turret that
Under attack.
they have quite a lot of hit points. You know, you can get up there and farm them for quite a lot of hit points if you so choose. You can see I'm starting to slightly struggle with the FPS again. But now I'm getting some damage out of this guy, but maybe he's struggling with FPS as well, because that wall was not the hardest to avoid, he says, having rammed a cathedral not long ago. He got a bit lucky with that final shot, though. It wasn't actually enough to kill him, but we're about to win on points anyway, so it doesn't matter. So there we go, my very first round of Frontline, and so far my best result. I got as far as Major, and you get promoted, as it were. The more you do, the more damage you do. I think the more XP you get, and I think if you get all the way up to General, you actually get some bonds out of it as well. I haven't managed it yet, but yeah, basically the better you do, then the better you'll be rewarded. So I was third on the team in terms of XP and damage done, and somehow managed to do it with no kills whatsoever. I don't know how that's possible, but I managed it. And there we go, we can see the detailed report, 200k profit, and you'll see the XP in a second there. 9,000 XP in total, but I also got some bonus out of getting beyond a certain rank. So there is an incentive to do better, as it were. There is an incentive to try and be further up the leaderboard, because at that point it will become more rewarding. So overall, I quite like this. I can see myself playing more of this, because it avoids quite a lot of the problems that I just inherently have with World of Tanks. And this isn't a permanent mode. They are running it for a month, and it's not all day long. I think it starts... I was looking at around lunchtime today, and I discovered that it wasn't going to start till like 3 PM or something. So I can't just jump in and do it whenever, but it's still for a fair portion of the day available. And the fact that it's going to be running over the next month, I really hope that they, you know, polish it a bit, make it run a bit smoother, and even if they make it a thing that runs in seasons in between, say, ranked games in World of Tanks, then that would be kind of cool. I would really enjoy that. And it would be even better if they would also vary the tier, because there is no reason why you couldn't have these games be at, say, tier 6, tier 7, tier 5. Hell, you could be really wacky and have like tier 2 or tier 3 or something like that, although you might have to adjust the spawn rates or some such thing, just because nobody has any armor down at that tier. But everybody is also comparatively fast, so it would make for some rather different gameplay. And they would have to tone down the rewards appropriately, I'm sure, which might make it less enticing, but it's just a thought, you know? There's no reason why this couldn't work with different tiers of vehicles. And I'm really keen to see what they do with it, how they develop it, because it's the first time I've enjoyed playing World of Tanks in a while. Like, just genuinely enjoyed playing on my own. So that's not nothing, you know? That's definitely not nothing. So anyway, hopefully you found this video interesting, and if you have, you can leave any comments below of your own experiences. You can hit that like button, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.